It is far better to grasp the universe as it really is than to persist in delusion, however satisfying and reassuring. Carl Sagan. Sagan emphasizes the importance of seeking the truth about the universe. Rather than holding onto comforting delusions, he encourages the pursuit of knowledge based on evidence and reason, valuing a clear understanding of reality over temporary reassurances. By embracing reality, we can make informed decisions and solve and appreciate the inspiring wonders of the natural world. Natural wonders don't just exist all around us, they exist within us. The human form has long been admired as a work of art, but the human body is a remarkable creation that, in all its wonder, is also a work of natural science. It is complex, with trillions of cells working together to keep us alive, to experience the world, to heal, and to adapt our bodies. These amazing machines accomplish great feats, and yet are held in perpetual and delicate balance. Modifying genes, excessive chemical use, and invasive procedures can disrupt that balance with unforeseen consequences. Adult bodies are better equipped to mitigate disruption, but a child's body is already in constant flux. Hormone replacement therapy, HRT, has emerged as an alleged lifeline for people seeking to align their physical characteristics with their mental image. It has been heavily argued as a medically necessary and life-saving medical practice with only anecdotal evidence to support it. Dr. Saint Amand is a board-certified physician and psychologist working with the Mayo Clinic and holds a certification from WPATH on best practices for transgender care. Here, Saint Amand asserts HRT is life-saving and avoids giving a direct answer to whether she would sidestep Texas law for gender-affirming care if the state enacted a law that restricts HRT and surgeries for adults.
When you say, you use the terms medically necessary and life-saving treatment.
Absolutely. That puberty is not going to be okay for them. Absolutely. Denying access to medically necessary care is not neutral and is harmful. But I do know that for some folks, treatment is a life or death issue. And I can say that with certainty. We have clear data, multiple studies that show decrease in suicidal ideation with treatment. And I'm glad to bring all of those studies and put them right on your desk.
So they say that this is medically necessary and it's life-saving to transition or use medication and hormones.
In certain cases, yes.
For children that are 12, 11, 9.
In certain cases, yes.
But we've heard today how that exact terminology is used. This is life-saving. This is medically necessary. Would you like your child to commit suicide or have these services? Will you use any loopholes to ship medication to Texas or to bring people to you in Minnesota to do the things that you do with puberty blockers or with hormones? Will you do that?
All I know is that people deserve access to care. And if this state decides that transgender adolescents cannot have access to care, then I'm going to work with legal teams to work to change that. If the bill says that I'm not allowed to help folks cross state lines or access that, then I'm going to follow the letter of the law.
So if you're doing them in Minnesota, but you have your license tied to Texas, I would think that it would. I'm certainly going to ask the author and some legal folks.
If the patient's in Texas, that's where that counts. But so if my patients are not in the state of Texas.
So would you do that? Would you bring them to Minnesota to do whatever it is, surgery or transition or medication?
Personally, no. But I would be in support of folks who are trying to help others access healthcare. Absolutely.
Sadly, these claims are more common than can be shown here. The quest for self-ID has led to a concerning trend known as do-it-yourself hormone replacement therapy, DIY-HRT. DIY-HRT is self-administering hormones without prescription or proper medical supervision. This dangerous path has been promoted to minors by community groups and encouraged by social media influencers, putting the health and well-being of these minors at risk. Picture this: your child venturing into the murky waters of DIY-HRT, navigating the internet under the direct and influence of unqualified and often anonymous voices, and encouraged into the unknown by familiar faces. In this self-styled experiment, consequences are far from superficial as the delicate balance of their internal, interconnected systems and external relationships is tested and disrupted. It is a siren's call, coaxing people to jump overboard, knowing they can't swim. A charlatan makes obscure what is clear. A thinker makes clear what is obscure. Hugh Kingsmill. Eli Yerlich, a prominent advocate for trans and trans youth, caused a stir with a public announcement on Twitter in response to legislative action directed at prohibiting HRT for minors. Yerlich proclaimed he would distribute HRT to anyone who requested it, quote, no questions asked. This alarmist message promotes a do-it-yourself approach to HRT, neglecting the importance of medical advice and tailored care that he and others constantly demand. Clara Sorrenti, known as Keffels, actively promotes the use of HRT for minors and directed them to the DIY HRT website through various channels, including Twitch streams, their Twitter account, and the allegedly now defunct Catboy Ranch Discord server. Sorrenti has been at the center of several controversies in recent years, but his advocacy of DIY HRT and whether he has encouraged minors to do it is the longest running. On the podcast Red Planet, in episode number 11, Sorrenti participated in a panel discussion about DIY HRT. Co-host Eric Sophia, going by Sophie from Mars in most public interactions, defines DIY HRT with Sorrenti nodding in agreement.
When you say DIY HRT, it sounds to me like you're saying medications that are normally prescribed for HRT, but if for whatever reason you're acquiring these same medications outside of that route. Because I was wondering, is that the only form of DIY HRT, or are there other forms?
When a trans person says DIYing, they are almost always going to be talking about buying through a gray market website. So gray market, like it's about the supply, right? So like it might be a controlled substance. Testosterone, for example, is a higher level controlled substance than estrogen. But like all prescription medications are controlled substances. When trans people say DIYing, they're usually referring to they've obtained through some kind of source HRT, and they're taking it without a prescription. The thing is, that isn't always gray market sites. I wanted to point this out. I think this is really important to consider. Trans people share their medication all the time, just constantly, and not just exactly the same medication, but like often people will just be like, "Hey, do you want to try out like doing an estrogen shot instead of taking pills? Like, do you want to just see how that feels? And then if you like it, you could ask your doctor to change you over, because like you don't necessarily want to go through the whole hassle of having a doctor's appointment in order to try something, and then you have to change back again."
The discussion continues with Sophie giving out information on obtaining hormones, using them without a prescription from gray market resources, such as stockpiling and sharing drugs, using hair loss products with hormones to dose himself, and strong-arming doctors into prescribing HRT by threatening to do the DIY method if they refused. The panel spent time praising a website called Trans Feminine Science for being a solid and accurate resource for all things DIY, and showcasing another site called HRT Cafe, now rebranded as HRT Coffee, the source of DIY HRT gray market affiliates. Trans Feminine Science is still referenced today, but its information lacks proper vetting. It's circular and uses self-citation as well as ignores newer studies that don't support the author's narrative. Further investigation into the listed gray market retailers reveals a revolving door of vendors. The reasons for these changes remain unclear, whether it is due to a crackdown or an attempt to complicate potential penalties. Although HRT Coffee is a well-known gray market affiliate site, it is only one of several in a network listing the same vendors, and among them all, the most active online pharmacies listed are based in Hong Kong, Brazil, and Russia. On September 9th, 2022, Sorrenti was a guest on H3 Podcast After Dark number 83. Co-host Ethan Klein asked Sorrenti about allegations of discussing DIY HRT with minors in private spaces. Sorrenti claims that his discussion about HRT and DIY primarily occur on Twitch, a popular streaming platform among gamers.
I mean, some of them do actually have the support of their families, but some of them don't. Like some of them are in like really fundamentalist Christian households, and
Right.
the only place they really feel safe talking about being trans is on the internet.
And so where do you guys do this? Is it like a Discord or something, or like a community?
Oh, it's like a Twitch stream.
Oh, just on Twitch.
Yeah.
So it's all just out in the public.
Yeah.
Because they make it sound like you have some kind of secret or some community spot that's not publicly seen where you're talking with kids and stuff, but that's not even the case.
No.
Wow, that's interesting. They really are just straight up lying, huh?
Later in the show, Klein visits Sorrenti's website and navigates to the DIY HRT link and gives Sorrenti the opportunity to explain and discuss it.
I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this because there's people who are pointing this out, that on your website, keffels.gg, you have a link here that says do it DIY HRT. So when it says do it yourself, what does that mean though? You're not there. That almost implies you're making the hormones.
No, you don't make the hormones.
Okay, so I think it's just a misnomer there.
The term home brew refers to the process of making or producing something from raw material at home. Listen as Keffels gives a different answer.
Yeah, no, when it's do it yourself, it's like you have to get the prescription yourself because there's no doctor available.
During the time the recording was made, the DIY HRT website was hosted on GitHub, along with the previously removed turf account lists. Recently, DIY HRT site underwent some modifications. These changes involved removing direct name affiliations and the donation banner, which previously acknowledged Sorrenti's $10,000 donation. The site now includes a single age verification step where users simply need to claim they are over 18. However, despite explicitly stating that it does not offer medical advice, DIY HRT contains advisory language and is referred to as a resource for self-administering dosage and instructions in various Reddit threads. Lauren McNamara, better known as Zinnia Jones, often promotes the use of puberty blockers, citing outmoded research in word games wrapped in philosophy. McNamara argues that if children cannot consent to puberty blockers with professional evaluation, how can they consent to the irreversible changes of natural puberty without any evaluation whatsoever? However, McNamara's question equates consent to medical interventions with a natural process, rendering the question philosophically and linguistically meaningless. Wittgenstein's anti-realist concept of language games supports this view. Drawing on the ideas of Judith Butler and Michel Foucault, it can be argued that gender, according to Butler, is a performative act, while Foucault's analysis emphasizes social power and control over individuals to conform to established norms. Therefore, the natural process of puberty can be viewed as a mechanism that operates beyond an individual's control or consent. McNamara's question is, to be blunt, bankrupt. Although McNamara emphasizes equal consent for full autonomy when challenged, he quickly clarified his position as skeptical of the consent argument. Unfortunately, not before several of his weak arguments became uncritically repeated within influential circles of society for their perceived intelligence. These arguments fuel ongoing debates without proper evaluation and get woven into the advocacy of DIY HRT. From Simone de Beauvoir and Luce Irigaray to Michel Foucault and Judith Butler, deep and cyclical examinations of identity and what defines us continue to surface as we delve into contemporary discussions on gender identity, including exploring and exposing DIY HRT. We can hear the distorted echoes of these historical inquiries into the nature of gender and the reality of sex. Fake art is an abomination that pollutes the world with its mediocrity. Pablo Picasso. DIY HRT, as an attempt to shape physical appearance, parallels the historical process of imagining and reimagining the concept and image of a woman throughout millennia. The ability of women to bring forth life is widely recognized, but their impact on culture and society extends beyond this. Women's influence has been examined in various ways, with art being particularly captivating in exploring these complexities and diverse perspectives. The most thought-provoking themes and expressions are easily identified within the artistic movements, such as the objective truth in realism, the perceived truth in Impressionism, the perspective truth in Cubism, and the subconscious truth in Surrealism. They explore consequence, defiance, mystery, eroticism, autonomy, and attainability. These are all part of the human experience, but we can see examples of more confined exploration, something more intimate and real. Camille Monet and A Child in the Artist's Garden, with bold strokes and a bright, vivid palette, provides a deep sense of exhilarating grace and adoration. It celebrates love, motherhood, and the beauty of familial connections. In sharp contrast is Camille Monet on her deathbed. The desaturated tones and chaotic strokes invoke the sense of a somber and solemn moment, exploring themes of loss, empathy, the human experience of mortality, and the fragility of life. These are all acknowledgement of truth, shared experiences, and reality rather than a modification of them. HRT, DIY or otherwise, is an attempt to mirror art and convey a personal interpretation of something through mimicry and impersonation, forever inauthentic and unoriginal. These gestures reduce the subject to trivial objects and shallow achievements, like comparing A Velvet to Elvis to Botticelli's Birth of Venus. From the enigmatic to the problematic, the objectified to the deified, and the imaginary to the cautionary, DIY HRT makes a mockery of the natural scientific and artistic wonder, their inherent value, and their meaning. It very well may be the most modern and most terrifying example of art imitating life. Or perhaps it's merely a poor approximation of life and a meager attempt to imitate art.